Here we are again, guys. We've just sat through another Royal Variety Show. It was on last night from 8 o'clock to 10:40 on ITV. That's 2 hours and 40 minutes of airtime given over to the Royal Variety Show. It's quite amazing when you think about it. I can't think of many other shows that get that sort of huge amount of airtime in a primetime slot at the weekend. This happens every year, and of course, as with every year, it attracts a huge amount of criticism from viewers on social media.
Fantastic. Rosie Jones, everybody.
Now, I personally think the Royal Variety Show is a bit of a relic from days gone by. I mean, I do think back in the day when we only had 4 or 5 channels, it was much more of a special event. You got to see lots of different comedians and variety performers in one show, under one roof, and that was actually quite difficult to do before the amazing amount of digital channels happened and, of course, the internet happened. But now I look at it and I think, meh, it is quite old-fashioned in its way, but it's also, sadly, trying to be up-to-date at the same time and doesn't really work, I don't really think. But that's just purely my opinion.
Oh, my favourite part of any gig is when I'm announced and you all clap. Oh. Give over.
Now, last night it would seem the comedian Rosie Jones attracted a lot of online vitriol for her 5 or 10 minute bit on the show.
There's always a point where you underestimate how long it will take me to get from there to here.
Now, for those of you who don't know, Rosie Jones is a comedian who suffers from cerebral palsy, and it's a disability that affects the way she moves and affects her speech, etc., etc. Now, she's not the only comedian on the circuit with cerebral palsy. I know at least another 2 who I've gigged with over the years who have cerebral palsy, but Rosie Jones is perhaps the most successful. I mean, regardless of her disability, she's successful in her own right, and, you know, all credit to her for that. But I think people didn't really warm to her online because, how do I say this? It's quite difficult, isn't it? I mean, there seem to be 2 camps here, right? There are people who say, look, regardless of her disability, I just don't find her funny. And that's not a mean thing to say. I'm not saying that because she's disabled, she isn't funny. I'm just saying, I didn't find her funny. Her jokes were not funny. Fine. All right, I understand that. But then there are other people who seem to be saying, I don't like her because she's disabled, which of course is a cruel and mean thing to say. Because let's be honest, it takes a lot of guts to do what she's doing. You know, to get up on stage and do comedy when you know that your speech is going to be hampered and your physical movement is going to be hampered does take a lot of guts, because you are relying entirely on the patience of your audience to listen to your jokes and wait for your punchlines. And sometimes with Rosie Jones, the punchlines take a while to come. So I do have a lot of respect for her for doing that, because sometimes when you play smaller comedy clubs, the audiences are not as kind and as patient as you'd expect the audience last night to be.
I'm very happy right now. I've had a good year because I am rich. And what I did with all my money is I bought a flat. But what you might not know about me is I am a bloody idiot.
And let's be honest, I don't think she deserves to be singled out for any sort of attack, when a lot of the stuff on the show wasn't that great. A lot of it outstayed its welcome. A lot of it was pretty tepid and dull. in many ways, when they showed the list of all the celebrities who died over the past year, when the comedians in that list came up and they showed clips of them in action, especially the final bit where they showed Barry Humphries in action as Dame Edna Everage, it was more funny than anything I saw that night. But also, a lot of the musical numbers outstayed their welcome. Some of them weren't very good. It's a funny old show, isn't it? I have to say, it really is a funny old show.
So I said, how was the boiler? He told me, and I went, I'll buy it.
Anyway, what did you make of the Royal Variety Show? Did you enjoy it? Did you actually sit through the whole thing and watch it from start to finish? If so, I really think you should go online and see if you can claim some sort of reward for doing so. Like maybe you could get some money off something at Amazon, because you deserve it for sitting through that, because that's a long old haul to sit through, so well done you. Let me know what you thought of it. I really don't think we should be singling any act out for particular criticism, because I do think they are probably all briefed beforehand. Look, you can't say this, you can't say that, don't make jokes about this, don't do that, etc., etc., which is why it always comes across as a bit undercooked. In many ways, the musical acts have a bit more freedom because they're just singing a song that's already been pre-written and everything for them. But I think the acts that have to talk and do comedy is probably a bit more difficult, which is probably why people sit at home and think this isn't very funny. Because maybe a few years ago, or decades ago, there was far more freedom in what could be said on stage, etc., etc. But now people are concerned that if we have a comedian on stage and he says something really bad, then, you know, advertisers will withdraw, etc., etc., and we'll lose money. You get what I'm saying. But let me know what you thought of it. Let me know what you thought of Rosie Jones. And I'll see you again later, perhaps, for another video. Goodbye, everyone. Have a lovely Monday.